some reason, I don't recall any big battles over the mix. Years later, there was a big battle over the mix. Out of the blue, Sting had this crazy idea to re-record all of our hits. Now that he sings better now and we've got better technology, let's do them all right this time.
Imagine creating one of the most successful songs of all time, only to spend decades fighting for the credit and the cash it generated. That's exactly what's happening inside one of rock's most iconic bands, The Police. Stewart Copeland is now taking Sting to court over Every Breath You Take, a song worth hundreds of millions. And the shocking truth behind this lawsuit will make you see the band's legacy very differently. In the late 1970s, The Police weren't just another British band trying to make it big. Sting, Stewart Copeland, and Andy Summers blended reggae grooves with punk attitude and pop melodies, creating a sound no one else had. Within just a few years, they went from playing clubs to headlining stadiums, selling out shows on nearly every continent. By 1983, they had become one of the biggest bands on Earth. That year, they dropped Synchronicity, their final studio album, and their biggest triumph. The record didn't just sell, it dominated. It spent 17 weeks at #1 in the US, briefly unseating Michael Jackson's Thriller from its historic run. Critics hailed it as a masterpiece, but for the band, it was also the breaking point. Behind the scenes, tensions between Sting and Copeland were explosive, with fights so intense they nearly broke up during recording sessions. Out of all the songs on that album, one track towered above the rest. Every Breath You Take, released as the lead single, it became the anthem of 1983 and one of the most successful singles of all time. It ruled the charts for 8 straight weeks in the US, won Song of the Year at the Grammys, and by some estimates went on to generate more than $100 million in publishing income over the decades. But here's where things get complicated. While the official credits listed Sting as the sole writer, many fans, and even musicians, have long argued that it wasn't just Sting's genius that made the track timeless. Andy Summers crafted the hypnotic guitar riff that instantly hooks listeners. Stewart Copeland laid down the subtle but driving drum pattern that gave the song its eerie heartbeat. Without those parts, the song might never have reached the level of legend it enjoys today. And yet legally, the royalties flowed almost entirely to Sting. That single decision, one name on the credits, would become a ticking time bomb. A song celebrated as the pinnacle of the Police's career was also sowing the seeds of one of rock's most bitter disputes, one that decades later would finally erupt in court. On paper, Every Breath You Take was a Sting song, written, composed, and owned entirely by him. That's what the official credits show. But inside the Police, the reality was far more complicated. Andy Summers has never hidden his frustration about that. He's repeatedly said that his instantly recognizable guitar riff, the one that gives the track its dark and hypnotic edge, was created entirely by him. In fact, Summers once described walking into the studio, hearing Sting's bare sketch of the tune, and realizing it needed something more. His riff, simple yet unforgettable, was the piece that transformed the track from ordinary to eternal. Stewart Copeland has his own grievances. Known for his unique drumming style, Copeland shaped the rhythm of Every Breath You Take into something hauntingly restrained. Unlike his usual explosive, complex beats, here he deliberately pulled back, creating a heartbeat-like pulse that amplified the song's unsettling, obsessive mood. Without that shift in approach, the song would have felt flat, another pop ballad instead of a global classic. Yet none of this input earned him or Summers co-writing credit. That decision caused long-lasting resentment, especially as the money poured in. Sting was the one cashing checks from publishing, licensing, and later streaming, while the others were left out of one of the most lucrative royalties pipelines in music history. And tensions weren't just financial. By the time Synchronicity was recorded, the band was already on the edge of collapse. Sting and Copeland clashed so fiercely that sessions sometimes erupted into physical fights. Summers often described the atmosphere as toxic, with Sting determined to control every detail, while the others felt increasingly sidelined. The success of Every Breath You Take only deepened the divide, because while it crowned them kings of the charts, it also reminded Copeland and Summers every single day that their contributions had gone uncredited. These frustrations never disappeared. For years, both men gave interviews hinting that something wasn't right with the royalties. Summers once called it a blessing and a curse. A blessing because the riff made him famous, a curse because he never saw the money it deserved. Copeland, too, admitted that the song's runaway success was both amazing and infuriating, since it left him locked out of the publishing pie. And while the band broke up shortly after Synchronicity, those wounds never fully healed. Decades later, with the song still raking in millions every year, Copeland and Summers finally decided they weren't going to stay quiet anymore. Every Breath You Take wasn't just a chart-topping single, it became one of the most profitable songs in music history. Industry analysts have long estimated that Sting alone earns over £500,000 a year from its royalties, and some reports put its lifetime earnings well past the $100 million mark. Even today, every time the song streams, gets played on radio, or shows up in a film, the cash register rings for Sting. The most drastic boost came in the 1990s, when Puff Daddy's tribute I'll Be Missing You shot to #1 worldwide. Built entirely on Summers' haunting guitar riff, the track became one of the best-selling singles of all time. Yet the royalties still flowed almost exclusively to Sting because his name alone was on the publishing credits. For Summers and Copeland, it was a painful reminder that their work powered the song's success, but they were locked out of its rewards. Then, in 2022, the gap grew even wider. Sting sold his entire songwriting catalog, including his Police songs, to Universal Music for a staggering $250 to $300 million. That deal made headlines not just for the price tag, but because it cemented Sting as one of the wealthiest figures in music. But for Summers and Copeland, it was like watching their legacy get sold off without their share. The most lucrative track in their history, the one that still brings in hundreds of thousands annually, was suddenly part of a 9-figure deal they weren't included in. For two bandmates who had spent decades living in the shadow of that song, the money wasn't just about luxury, it was about fairness. And when sums this massive are at stake, disputes that were once private suddenly become very public. Now, after decades of frustration, Stewart Copeland has decided to make it official. He's suing Sting for millions in unpaid royalties from Every Breath You Take. For Copeland, the issue goes far beyond bruised egos. It's about decades of money he believes he should have been entitled to. His argument is simple. As the drummer and co-architect of the song's distinctive feel, his contributions weren't just performance, they were part of its DNA. Copeland has often explained that his decision to strip his drumming down to a stark, heartbeat-like rhythm gave the track its unsettling power. Fans might not notice it consciously, but that restraint created the atmosphere that turned Sting's lyrics into something haunting. Without it, the song might never have reached the level of legend it enjoys today. And yet, because he wasn't credited as a writer, Copeland never received the kind of publishing royalties that flow endlessly from a song like this. The lawsuit filed in London's High Court lays out exactly that grievance. Sting and his publishing company, Magnetic Publishing, allegedly failed to properly account and distribute money owed. Copeland is seeking his rightful share, millions in back royalties, and potentially a slice of the future profits that keep rolling in every year. Andy Summers is right there with him. His claim centers on the famous guitar riff, a part he's called the hook that everybody remembers. Summers has long argued that the riff is as essential to the song as the lyrics themselves, and the lawsuit reflects his demand for recognition and compensation. But for Stewart, the case is deeply personal, not just about what was left off the credits, but about decades of financial imbalance in one of rock's most enduring hits. And now that the courts are involved, it's not just about two old bandmates fighting, it's about the future ownership of one of the most valuable songs ever written. On the surface, this might look like just another bandmate feud, but the truth is, Stewart Copeland's lawsuit against Sting could set a precedent that ripples through the entire music business. Every Breath You Take isn't just a hit, it's a money-printing machine. If Copeland and Summers succeed in proving their contributions deserve official recognition, it could force the industry to rethink how credit is assigned, even decades after a song's release. That's massive. Why? because thousands of songs were built the same way. One band member gets the official credit, while others shape the sound with riffs, beats, and arrangements that define the track. Until now, those contributions have been dismissed as just performance, but this lawsuit puts a spotlight on the gray area between performance and authorship. If the court rules that Copeland's rhythm or Summers' riff counts as songwriting, it opens the door for countless other musicians to revisit old credits. Imagine guitarists, drummers, and producers all demanding a share of hits they helped bring to life. The financial stakes could be enormous, especially in today's world where old songs are worth more than ever thanks to streaming and billion-dollar catalog sales. For the industry, this case isn't just about the police. It's about whether the traditional definition of songwriter still holds up in the streaming era. And for Sting, it's about whether the fortune he's built on that single credit might suddenly have to be shared. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to check out our video on Sting's input to this lawsuit right here on the screen.